Welcome to Waiting Tables Podcast, sponsored by Bruscato Law, where we share stories of people in our community who live to serve others. All right, so our guest today is Louisiana State Representative Gabe Firment, who currently serves House District 22, representing Grant, LaSalle, and parts of Natchitoches Parish in central Louisiana. Before entering public office, Gabe built a career in the insurance industry as a claims professional and a small business owner, work that put him in the front lines of helping families and businesses recover after disasters. He earned degrees from Louisiana College and Louisiana Tech University, and his background is insurance has made him one of the legislature's leading voices on property insurance and homeowners issues. Elected in the Louisiana House in 2019, Representative Firment now chairs the House Insurance Committee, where he's worked on legislation affecting homeowners, insurers, and Louisiana's often challenging property insurance market. He's also become one of the legislature's best-known social conservatives, sponsoring legislation on issues ranging from parental rights to healthcare policy for minors. Away from politics, Gabe describes himself first as a husband, father, grandfather, businessman, and man of faith. He and his wife, Erica, have raised their family in central Louisiana, where she's worked as a public school educator, and he has long been active in his local church. Now he's taking on a new challenge, running for Louisiana's 5th Congressional District, a seat that stretches across much of northeast and central Louisiana. Whether you agree with his politics or not, today's conversation isn't just about policy. It's about the experiences, convictions, and moments that shape the person behind the public office. Representative Gabe Firment, welcome to Waiting Tables.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. That was a pretty good introduction. We could just stop there, I guess, if you wanted to.
Was that accurate?
Yeah, that was very accurate.
There was a little part in there. It sounded like you were an advocate for claimants in the insurance claims business. Is that right?
Absolutely. I worked as a claims adjuster, independent adjuster for many years, primarily property damage claims. But since I've been in the legislature, I have primarily worked as an advocate for policyholders, commercial property owners and homeowners with disputed claims through the appraisal process. So no, I've seen both sides of that argument, and have spent a lot more time representing claimants rather than insurance companies the past few years for sure.
Okay. Well, before anybody knew you as Representative Firment, who was Gabe growing up?
A regular guy, and still a regular guy. I grew up in Ball, Louisiana, which is in Rapides Parish, right near the Grant Parish line. My daddy is a Vietnam vet, served in the United States Marine Corps, did a couple of tours in Vietnam, retired from the Louisiana Army National Guard, worked full-time for the Guard, served in Desert Storm, then he retired from the post office, and a very important figure in my life. My mama worked as a receptionist and secretary, and I guess probably 40 years ago now, she started teaching women's aerobics and exercise classes, and now at 78, almost 79, she's still doing that, and that's really like a ministry for her, keeping ladies in shape. One sister who's an attorney. And, just a regular life. Grew up in the country there in Ball, went to Tioga High School, graduated in 1989, got a bachelor's degree in public administration from Louisiana College, got a great liberal arts education there. Didn't know what to do with myself, and went and got an MBA at Tech, and really bounced around and have done quite a few things since then. Worked for the LCR Corporation, selling plumbing supplies for a couple of years in Shreveport and Northwest Louisiana when I got out of college, and got homesick. Was very close to my grandpa and to my family, and one of my cousins owned at the time a small independent adjustment company in Winfield, and he said, do you want to be a claims adjuster? And I said, hey, if it gets me back home, I'm willing to try it. And so that was probably 1999, and so have been licensed as a claims adjuster since then. Had a brief stint there where I, for 3 or 4 years, owned a construction company, mostly roofing, again specializing in
Insurance claims?
and so know what it's like to carry bundles of shingles up on the roof in the Louisiana summertime. And again, 2019, ran for office, took office in 2020, and since then, haven't worked much. It's hard to serve in this part-time job, part-time in the legislature and have a career, but have managed to, again, represent primarily policyholders on disputed claims through the appraisal process. And, so it's been a rewarding career for me so far.
What would you say, what kind of home were you raised in?
About as average as you can think about for a Louisiana kid. Of course, a family of faith, Southern Baptist, grew up going to church every time the doors were open at Kingsville Baptist Church in Pineville, Louisiana, and so my faith has always been a big part of who I am. We love sports, and my daddy's probably the most competitive person that I know outside of myself, and so he coached my baseball teams growing up, and loved playing baseball, basketball, football, you name it. Hunting and fishing is just as important and part of the culture. So I spent a lot of times in the woods, a lot of time fishing. Really, that's what I probably love to do more than anything is to hunt and fish. What
do you like to fish?
Bass fish. Yeah.
You ever do any tournaments or?
Not really. Yeah, not really.
Just
one here and there when I was younger. I'm too busy, too much tournament fishing or much fishing of any kind for that matter these days. But
some of those tournaments have some big purses in them.
Yes, they do, and these days probably spend a lot more time hunting. We live right in the middle of Kisatchie National Forest between Pollock and Dry Prong in Grant Parish, and so it sure is nice to walk out the back door and be able to deer hunt, squirrel hunt, and that's what I spend more time doing than anything these days. As far as hobbies go, anyway.
So, who would you say was the biggest influence on the man that you've become?
Well, of course, my mom and daddy, and I'm not someone with a lot of heroes. I guess I've got very high expectations of myself and others, but I would say if I've got a hero, the one hero would be my maternal grandfather. His name was L.O. Ferguson. He was born and raised in the little community of Atlanta, Louisiana, in Wind Parish, and not a very wealthy man, wasn't tremendously successful in business or, wasn't a great athlete, but he served in World War II and was wounded driving a tank destroyer across the Ludendorff Bridge in the Battle of the Bulge, and awarded a Purple Heart for that. But not even that is what made him my hero. He was a man of just great character and great faith, a gentle man, but also a man who knew that there were some times when you drew a line in the sand and you wouldn't compromise your values. You wouldn't sacrifice your integrity. And so, the greatest man that I've ever known and probably the greatest inspiration in my life by far.
So you mentioned that you were competitive, and it sounded like you maybe played some baseball.
Yeah, played a little bit. Wasn't all that good, really. Played at Toga. We had a really good program. We won state championship in my freshman and sophomore years. Of course, I didn't get on the field, but was part of that program. I was a little bitty guy, little bitty kid growing up. In fact, weighed 3 pounds when I was born, and my daddy likes to tell the story that they could have put me in a shoebox, and really it was 50-50 whether or not I was going to make it. And I guess I've been fighting ever since then. But I was a little bitty kid in high school. I think probably 5'2", 100 pounds as a freshman, and didn't get any size till I was just about out of school. But yeah, I was second baseman, and loved to play. That was my favorite sport growing up. Did not play in college, but was part of some good teams. Actually, played a lot of slow pitch softball, probably till I was 35 or 40 years old. Too long. But just love to compete and love to be a part of a team. So spent many years playing slow pitch softball for church teams and rec leagues, and probably paying the price for all those slides and running into fences for all those years.
So you mentioned that you had a roofing company. What period of time was that?
That probably would have been 2002 to 2005, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. And it was a great experience. And I had a partner. We were very successful in selling roofs. In fact, I had worked as a catastrophe adjuster, running around the country doing hurricanes and hailstorms. For handling claims for insurance companies. And so we sort of brought the Texas model to central Louisiana, where the roofer would meet with the adjuster on every inspection. And that's something that was not being done back then. And so we were real successful at selling roofs, but to be honest with you, State Farm more or less set the rate back then, and I think they were paying about $75 a square, which was not enough to cover all of your expenses and pay both partners what we wanted to be paid. So, and my heart really wasn't in it. So I did that for a few years and sold out to my partner, who still got the business going, and went back to handling claims on the road primarily.
So during the roofing business days, would you sign up your customer or the homeowner like on an AOB type contract?
No, we never used AOBs.
And I guess for the people listening, that's assignment of benefits that contractors used to use.
Yeah, and I actually passed a bill in 2023 prohibiting AOB contracts in Louisiana, and that was
for contractors.
For contractors, correct.
Yeah.
For property damage claims, first party property damage claims. But no, more or less what I would do is just certainly wasn't any sort of high pressure like you see today on roofing sales, but we'd just meet with the adjuster. If it was a steep roof, we'd climb it and take pictures and mark the damage, prepare the estimate, really just make ourselves useful. It wasn't an adversarial relationship, and it worked. It worked really well, and I was a pretty good salesman. And coming from the adjuster background, that was helpful. But no, I loved my time as a roofer, and it made me a much better adjuster, and taught me some valuable skills when it comes to construction and dealing with laborers. That's dealing with employees can be challenging at times, and so that was a good experience for me. Sure don't regret it. Would probably be doing it to this day if State Farm paid a little better. So I've had that conversation with the State Farm guys in the Capitol many times, but no, it was a good experience for me.
So as a legislator, and it's the you went from an adjuster sounds like you handled claims for homeowners and for insurance companies both. And then as a contractor, you were interested in seeing a successful resolution to claims so that your invoices could be paid appropriately. And now as a legislator on the House Insurance Committee, or as the chairman for the House Insurance Committee, how do you view the difference between your role today as the chair of that committee versus your previous role as a contractor and as an adjuster?
Well, I think my experience as a contractor, an adjuster, and as an advocate for policyholders has put me in a pretty unique position to chair that committee. And I think that's one of the strengths that I've had, and I think, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons we've had some successes, is because I'm able to not come at it just from the policyholder side or the plaintiff attorney side or the insurance company side. But when you get elected to office, your perspective has to change. And this has been one of the disappointing things for me, is that sometimes people come to the legislature and instead of taking the position or remembering that they're representing 43,000, 44,000 people back home, they're still representing their interest. And we see a lot of that. I mean, that still happens. And so, like, every day when I wake up, every night when I go to bed, I remind myself, what an honor it is to represent the people of Grant Parish, LaSalle Parish, Natchitoches Parish. And I've got to remove myself from what benefits me, and I've got to make decisions. I've got to advocate for the people I represent as State Representative Gabe Firment, and that's something I'm proud of. If you look at legislation I've passed, and both sides, the insurance companies and the plaintiff attorneys, will tell you that I'm about as fair as they come, and that at the end of the day, I'm concerned about the policyholder, about the person I represent, not about a particular industry or a particular advocacy group. For me, it's about the policyholder. And again, I think that has translated into really some historic reforms that have been passed, that we have passed in the legislature the past 2 or 3 years. So, no, I think my unique perspective as someone who's worked in all sides of property and casualty insurance has been very beneficial.
I can't imagine what your job must be like, because I know there's a lot of conversations that go on beyond just your conversations with the other representatives, and that there are people that come testify that, have an interest or have skin in the game or whatever. And I'm sure there are also people from insurance companies that come testify that, see it from how do we save costs on claims, and how can we reduce the amount of exposure that they have. I mean, that's ultimately what they are concerned about, is their exposure, versus the claimant side is more concerned about maximizing the recoveries. For me, what I would be very concerned about, and I'm sure you are, is like, I remember after Hurricane Laura, actually had some property in Lake Charles or in Moss Bluff. I don't know if you've ever been through Moss Bluff, during Hurricane Laura, that basically got decimated. And I remember driving down there to check it out, and excuse me, and I had a partner, and we would go drive around and see what everybody else experienced. And then maybe a couple of years later, I drove around Lake Charles, and I'm seeing tarps on roofs and that big high-rise building with glass blown out. It's got boarded up. And, I got to think, if I was in the legislature and I saw that, I would want to make dang sure that the insurance companies did what they were actually supposed to do and take care of these claims, so that not only the people, but I mean, the properties get fixed so that they're not an eyesore for the whole community that maybe that weren't as severely affected.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I spent many months in Moss Bluff and Lake Charles in southwest Louisiana after Hurricane Rita in 2005. And Hurricane Laura was even more devastating. And I think the response of the legislature after Laura, Delta, Zeta in 2020 and Hurricane Ida in 2021, I think it was appropriate. And we absolutely heard from hundreds of citizens whose homes were not properly repaired, who were very frustrated with the process. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I can tell you this, nobody was harder on the insurance industry for their response following those hurricanes than me. And I passed legislation to do things like specify when overhead and profit is owed. If you've got damage that involves several trades and the services of a general contractor are obviously going to be needed, you better be paying overhead and profit. Passed legislation that would require payment up front of 3 months of additional living expense in the event of total loss, and that's just the ones I can think of offhand. So we passed a lot of good pro-consumer legislation to address a lot of those concerns. Of course, we were in the middle of COVID in 2020, and we're also this transition from handling claims the old way, where you send adjusters out, to an over-reliance, I think, of technology to measure roofs and to assess damage, and all of that. Inflation, probably the biggest thing that hurt us in 2020 and 2021 was the inflation tied to COVID. So where a home could have been, a 2,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home could have been rebuilt in 2019 for $250,000. 2021, it may be $400,000, and that was just this confluence of events related to COVID and shortage of materials, and so I think that hurt us, and so now there's a big discussion over how we properly evaluate replacement cost values on dwellings, and something that we need to be working on. But I think our insurance market is in a much better place now as a result of those reforms we passed in 2020. It's very easy to complain about insurance companies not treating customers properly, and there needs to be remedies for that. And of course, I love the appraisal process. We actually authored a bill, I believe, in 2024. We're the first state in the nation to really establish in statute regulations regarding the appraisal process, which is a way to resolve claims outside of litigation, which is good from my perspective. If we can avoid litigation, it's much more affordable to the homeowner. We certainly need people to be able to go to an attorney if they're not getting resolution from the insurance company. But for me, it all starts with that first, and speaking just on property claims, with that first inspection. Actually, the first phone call. What I would tell adjusters working for me is you've got to return phone calls, because if there's not a line of communication open, the whole claim is going to break down. And so stay in touch with your insured. Make sure you get out there, document all the damages. My philosophy as an adjuster, and I was really good as a claims adjuster. I wanted to pay every single policyholder I was handling a claim for. I wanted to pay them every single penny they were owed under the contract, and that should be the philosophy of every adjuster. And back in the old days when I started, people trusted their insurance companies, and they were glad to see their adjuster come. I always took pride in the fact that, even if a claim wasn't covered, and sometimes claims just aren't covered, if you would take the time to explain to people in the policy why it's not covered, they would be very grateful and very understanding, and we'd all be friends at the end of the day. But, that's changed. I think when attorneys found out they could make money on property damage claims, and when insurance companies discovered, maybe it's advantageous to not necessarily pay claims like we should, and you've got bad actors on both sides, the adjusting profession was not near as fun. And I think it's the extremes on both sides really that cause problems for everybody. But the market's much healthier. On the homeowner side, I think we've had 5 more companies enter the market just this year. People have options now, and that's what I'm telling everybody. I love my insurance agent, but not enough to pay him double than what I could pay somewhere else. So we've got options available, and if people will shop around, I think they'll find that there's cheaper rates available. They need to be educated on what sort of deductible they can handle. The higher deductible, the lower the premiums normally. They need to make sure they've got adequate coverage, but they also need to make sure they're not overdoing it on coverage. So the homeowners market is stabilizing. Just anecdotally, I've talked to several members of the legislature who have shopped around, even in coastal parishes, who've shopped around and have found very significant savings. 2025 was our big tort reform or legal reform year, and we're seeing tangible benefits there. I believe we've had over 40 companies file for rate decreases. Private passenger auto rates are down about 6%, I think, over the last year. So I think that was a fight on the legal reform, but we ended up passing a balanced package of legal reform bills and consumer-friendly bills. And, I'm sure there'll be people critical of some of the legislation that was passed, but I'm proud of what we did, and no one can argue with the results. Yes, insurance rates are still too high, but since I became chairman, since Governor Landry took office in 2024, there's no disputing the fact that rates are coming down, especially on private passenger auto.
So there's like 20,000 lawyers, I think, in the state of Louisiana. I think that's an accurate figure that are practicing law. Actually, let's look that up. Let me see something here. How many lawyers are licensed to practice law in the state of Louisiana? I think it's like 20,000.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right. Let's see, 4 million people, 20,000 lawyers. I don't know how that.
Is that right?
Is that right? Yeah, I don't know how that compares to other states. Probably a little higher per capita.
Be interesting to know how that compare to other states.
It would, yeah.
Wonder how many of those are criminal prosecutors.
Yeah, that's
or indigent defender attorneys or criminal defense lawyers that primarily do that.
Right.
Because that's it's a lot. There's a lot of lawyers in the criminal world.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how AI impacts the legal profession.
Louisiana has about 19,500 active resident attorneys for a population of roughly 4.5 million, which puts it 7th highest in the nation per capita.
Okay.
So we got a lot of lawyers. Mm-hmm. There's a lot.
Yeah, New York is the highest with 9.6 per 1,000 residents. Louisiana is 4.27. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, and I am certainly not anti-lawyer. My sister's an attorney and got a lot of good attorney friends. So, we certainly need a way for people to resolve disputed claims, and unfortunately, sometimes we got to litigate them. Now, and when we tackled legal reform in 2025, it was based on data, a hard look at the data. And what we discovered is that here in Louisiana, we do not get in more accidents than other states, more automobile accidents, but we file bodily injury claims at roughly twice the national average, and we litigate to resolve those disputed claims at twice the national average. So we are an outlier there, and that's what the hard data showed. And so some of the legislation that was passed is intended to reduce the number of litigated claims. And I think we're beginning. I don't know that we've had enough sample size to definitively prove that legislation has led to reduced lawsuits. Well, we also extended prescription from a year to 2 years, which I think is
ironically has the effect of reducing litigation claims.
Yeah, and the insurance industry didn't like that, but
I think it helps them.
And as an adjuster, I can tell you, I hated casualty claims. I didn't handle many of them, but as an adjuster, I can tell you that on many claims, if you've got more time to resolve them, you're going to avoid litigation. And so I think by going to the 2-year prescriptive period, that will and has led to fewer lawsuits as well. So, look, I think we've taken a balanced approach. We passed legislation to make sure consumers were not punished for lapses in coverage that may or may not have been their fault. We passed legislation. I had a bill to remove a portion of advertising expenses, insurance company advertising expenses, from the rate-making calculations. We passed legislation last year to require mandatory premium reductions for installing cameras and telematic systems. So, yeah, sure, we tackled modified comparative fault. We increased the limits on no pay, no play. I passed a bill to prevent illegal aliens from collecting general damages and lost wages. So, we had some pretty
what about
substantial.
on the workers' comp side? Does that affect like if it's I don't know what let's say a person from South America is here and they don't have a visa and they're working and they get hurt on the job. What happens?
Yeah, so my bill was specific to automobile injury claims. Yeah,
Okay.
But I do think you'll see legislation regarding illegal aliens and workers' comp coming. In fact, legislation may have been filed last year that didn't make it through, but I think that's a discussion that we're going to have.
Don't you think that would have the effect of financially encouraging contractors to hire workers that
It could.
don't have a work visa?
It could. And so I think that's, again, it's if legislation was filed, and I just can't remember, it didn't make it out of committee, but I do know that, and I'm not a workers' comp expert, but I do know that is a conversation that's those conversations are taking place. But no, what my bill would have done is simply said, if you're here illegally, you don't have a constitutional right to sue for pain and suffering or mental anguish or lost wages. And again, it's very difficult to quantify legislation like that because, and John, you'll know more about this than me, but I don't think, prior to this bill anyway, divulging your citizenship status probably not a part of what was discoverable in negotiations or in court. But again, anecdotally, I've heard that there have been quite a few cases where attorneys have had to turn down accepting cases because the injured person was an illegal alien. Some people may not like it, but I think citizenship carries rights, and being here illegally prevents you from some of the rights that are due American citizens. So I'm proud of that legislation. we passed a watered down version of medical billing transparency that I think is going to help. Very successful. Auto insurance reforms in 25, property reforms in 24, which gave me the opportunity this past session to kind of step back from insurance reform a little bit, and I think I ended up passing 11 bills that the governor signed, some criminal justice bills, some insurance bills, but not necessarily reform focused. But it was an interesting session, very successful. Be happy to touch on any of those or whatever was on your mind.
Well, let's jump back to your family. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yes, so I am married to my wife, Erica. Erica is a principal at an elementary school in Grant Parish. She absolutely loves her job, and would not trade it for anything in the world. I've got 3 kids. Oldest daughter, I guess, is 25 now. 3 grandkids. I've got a son that's just graduated. He'll be going to Louisiana Tech in the fall, and then my youngest daughter will be a junior in high school, and she is in the middle of everything. She's I think president of her class and beta club, and plays basketball and powerlifting, runs track. She leads worship at church. So running her around has been a full-time job. So thankfully, she just got her driver's license and is now in a position to bring herself places. Thank goodness. But no, love my family and proud of my kids. And that's ultimately the reason I decided to run for the state legislature is and why I'm running for Congress is to make sure these kids, grandkids now have a future. And so many of my friends, their kids and grandkids have moved to Dallas or Houston or Tennessee or Florida to raise their families. And we need to stop that. We need to make sure there's opportunity right here at home. And certainly don't want to see my kids run off to Texas.
You've been very open about your faith in a lot of the statements that I've seen you give publicly and also here today. Have there been times where you were challenged by your faith at intersections with politics that maybe didn't congruently align?
No, not really. In fact, if your faith is who you are. I mean, being a Christian is what defines me, and so if there is a policy that's incongruent with my faith, I will not support it. That would be a violation of my moral code and my character, and for me, there's nothing more important. And I think as a Christian, no matter what your vocation is, that's your ministry. And so no, that's like my number one priority is serving Jesus Christ. And I don't care if I'm a roofer or a salesman or a insurance adjuster or a congressman. That's what's going to guide me. I'm very active in my church, lifelong Southern Baptist.
When you say you're active, what does that mean to you?
Well, I'm a deacon. I'm deacon in my church, which is one of the elders, an elder in the church. Of course, deacons are called on primarily to care for the sick, to care for the hungry, to assist the pastor in ministry needs. So, very honored to serve in that capacity. I've been teaching an adult Sunday school class, I guess, for almost 20 years now. And just great joy for me doing that. I'm active in the ministry of the Gideons International. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gideons.
They supplied all the hotels with Bibles, right?
Yes. Yep. So nearly every hotel room in the United States and many around the world have that Gideon Bible, but not just hotels, but hospital, nursing homes, colleges, you name it, you're going to find a Gideon Bible there. And so just a wonderful ministry that I'm proud to be a part of is getting Bibles into the hands of people who need them. Yeah.
So going back to when you made the decision to run for state representative, prior to that, had you had any political office or
No, not at all.
like parish police jury or anything like
No, and can't say that I had ever really dreamed of going into politics. Of course, I always voted and I always read the political section of the newspaper and watched Fox News. That was about the extent of my politics. And but so probably around, I don't know, probably as early as 2016, 2017, even though I was, my business was doing good and I was active in my church and coaching my kids' baseball teams and working with the Gideons, I still felt like something was missing in my life, that I needed to be doing something more. And just out of the blue, a friend called one day and said, "Hey, we want you to run for state rep." And prayed about it and talked about it with my wife and knew that's what God wanted me to do. And won that election pretty handily, campaigned hard. That was 2019. And
so I want to explore this a little bit. So it wasn't your idea to run for state representative?
Somebody, a friend just called and said, "We're not happy with the representation we're getting. Your name has come up several times. Would you be interested in running?" And honestly, the congressional run is kind of similar. Running for Congress was not at the top of my mind. But when the map changed, we redrew the map.
But you didn't initially enter the fray.
No.
When the prior map was
right.
When the 6th was before the Calais decision came out, which is a U.S. Supreme Court decision that basically stated that the 6th congressional map for Louisiana was unconstitutional on the basis that it was determined based on race,
right,
not based on non-protected measures. And so the Supreme Court essentially said that map was unconstitutional, and that since that district was such a substantial part of the state, we had to redraw all the districts.
Right.
And so we got a new 5th congressional district boundary, which changed it somewhat, and it included less at the time before the Calais decision. It included less of Rapides Parish, right? Or maybe
none of Rapides, none of Grant. It was really heavily skewed to East Baton Rouge and Livingston. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't even a North Louisiana district. It had, in my opinion, it really had become a South Baton Rouge-based district. So the legislature was called in to redraw the map, and what we ended up with was a 5th district, much closer to the traditional configuration. Running from Bastrop to Bogalusa is how I've been describing it. Very expansive district geographically.
Challenging for somebody in your situation as a candidate.
24 parishes, over 100 municipalities.
It might be the most challenging district to traverse. I don't know, maybe the
4th is a big district too.
4th goes all the way to Lake Charles?
I think so, yeah.
4th might be worse then.
Well, probably no. I think the 5th is geographically, and I'm not going to say it's worse, but it's bigger. It is bigger and got a lot of rural parishes, but there are some commonalities there, and I think that was why the district was drawn like it was, because maintaining those communities of interest, and we've got a lot of agriculture and timber, and I think even the faith communities are are similar throughout most of the districts. So I love it. I think it's a great district. I think the people have a lot in common, whether you're talking about Morehouse or East Carroll, West Carroll, Ouachita, down through Central Louisiana over to the Florida parishes. Just regular God-fearing, salty earth people that really, for the most part, just want government to leave them alone and just want to raise their families in peace and send their kids to good schools and have an opportunity to make a living. So I think it's a great district. I'm excited about it. And look, when the map came out, I had a few people ask me if I had considered running, and I started taking a closer look at it and announced officially last week that I was in.
So it's clear to me, and I'm sure to most everybody else that's paying attention at all, that if you're going to run for a congressional district in this state or most of the states in the Southeast, and not have President Trump's endorsement, you basically have an uphill battle. Where do you see yourself in the? I mean, I don't think President Trump has made an announcement about an endorsement as of now.
Well, let me go on record as saying, President Trump, if you're listening, I will definitely take that endorsement. So, it's interesting where we're at right now. So, State Senator Blake Miguez received President Trump's endorsement to run in the 5th District. Mm-hmm. And so he has not officially declared that he's running in one district or the other. Now,
but it's known that he's not going to run in the 5th, I think.
I don't know.
Is it?
No,
is it not?
I would not make that assumption.
Okay.
Now, I am Senator Miguez's friend, and I think the 6th District would be a better fit for him geographically. But look, that's his decision to make. And
if he were to enter the 5th, what would you do?
Oh, I'm in. Yeah, I'm staying in regardless. But of course, President Trump's endorsement is huge, and I would absolutely take that endorsement in a heartbeat. And that's because the people of the 5th. And I'll point this out about my district. LaSalle Parish, which is one of the parishes I represent, in 2016 had the second highest percentage of Trump voters in the nation. One little county in Kentucky supported President Trump at a higher rate than LaSalle Parish. I believe if you look at the state, Grant Parish, my home parish, LaSalle, Vernon, and Cameron in 2016 and probably 2016, 2020, and 2024 were the biggest supporters of President Trump. So, look, I come from Trump country. I think what President Trump has accomplished really these last 12 years or 10 years, going on 10 years, since he has ascended to the top of the political world. He in a lot of ways, he's, in my opinion, and some people may not like it, but he saved the country from some of the disastrous policies of the left. And so I'm proud of my district supporting President Trump. I'm proud to support President Trump. And, man, what an honor it would be to work alongside him, Speaker Mike Johnson, who also is a great man of faith and really someone who I try to emulate in my political career. Of course, Majority Leader Steve Scalise. So, look, it would be a dream come true for me to go to Washington and work with those men.
So you just named a few folks in the political world. Who would you say you admire, look up to? And obviously those three names that you mentioned, President Trump, Speaker Johnson, and Representative Scalise are among the three. But are there others that you particularly admire or want to model yourself after? Or?
Well, look, so this may really throw you for a loop, but so I would say two men really are who I would consider mentors, and one I'm really close to, one I know, but I'm not that close to on a personal basis. And Speaker Mike Johnson would be someone who I've followed very closely because he is so open in his faith, and so what a great testament to the fact that you can be a strong Christian and survive some of the challenges that come with being in Washington, D.C. I think he's done a masterful job. I don't know that anybody could have done what he's done in negotiating the partisan politics, and we've got such a close numbers in Congress when it comes to Democrat and Republicans, and just negotiating these different crises that the nation has faced, and we've got such a ideological disparity in the nation. I think he's just done a wonderful job with that. Nobody could have done better, and for me, his willingness to share his faith is inspiring to me. And believe it or not, the second person I would point to is also Mike Johnson, Pineville Mike, or my great friend, Speaker Pro Tem Mike Johnson, who is from Pineville, and he's become my closest friend in the legislature, and just someone who, when I watch how he cares about people and how he brings people from different parties and different parts of the state, people with vastly different ideas together, and just seeing how he leads with grace and dignity and integrity. And he has been much more political than me in his career, and coming in, I didn't know anything about the legislative process or politics, and Mike sort of took me in under his wing. We've become great friends, and so I would point to the two Mike Johnsons as the two greatest influences on my political life.
What about a Democrat? Is there a Democrat out there that you particularly admire or feel like is a person of admirable qualities?
There are some colleagues I've gotten very close to in the legislature. In fact, and boy, he's going to be surprised if he hears this, but Representative Edmund Jordan, who is the chairman of the Black Caucus, and he serves on the insurance committee with me. He's actually in line to be the president of INCOL, which is the National Council of Insurance Legislators. And Edmund's a very polarizing figure, and he is Democrat all the way, and I'm about as Republican as you can get. But we've become very good friends, and I think Edmund would agree with that. And we practically agree on nothing from a policy perspective. Although insurance is sometimes not as partisan as other policy areas. So we have managed to find common ground on some insurance discussions. But he's just a good guy, and we both grew up in middle class families. His parents were educators, and so I admire him for taking a stand for what he thinks is right, even though we've got vastly ideas about how we accomplish ways to make our constituents' lives better. There's never any doubt in my mind that he does what he does and says what he says and files the bills that he does because he thinks it's going to help his people. So, Edmund Jordan is somebody that I've got a lot of respect for.
What about on the national scene?
Quite frankly, no, not off the top of my head. No Democrats come to mind. And look, when you look at some of the policies that the National Democratic Party has embraced with some of the LGBTQ issues and the border, and really a wholehearted embrace of Marxism and socialism. It's hard. It's just hard for me to believe anybody would choose to be a Democrat, to be quite honest with you. And So yeah, nobody at the national level. One of the things I would probably be known for outside of my work as insurance chairman is in 2023, I authored House Bill 648, which was supposedly very controversial at the time. Hard to imagine that it was, but it was simply a bill that said, we're not going to let you perform these experimental sex change procedures, surgically or chemically on children. And, that turned into a monumental fight at every step of the way.
Like on the state level, or?
Yeah, in the state legislature, I filed that bill and, was castigated by the media. Of course, the governor at the time was completely opposed to that legislation. And it was a fight of epic proportions. And the grassroots support that I got here in Louisiana from around the state was just amazing. It really turned into a spiritual battle, in my opinion. And, we at one point, the bill was killed by a Republican state senator in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee. It was resurrected miraculously by some obscure procedural method in the Senate, passed the House and the Senate, and the governor vetoed it. And, of course, here in Louisiana, it's impossible to override a governor's veto, right? Well, for the first time, I believe, in the history of the state, the legislature went in to a special veto override session, and we overrode Governor John Bel Edwards' veto of my bill, House Bill 648, the Stop Harming Our Kids Act. And
was there anything else in that bill that made it offensive to anyone else other than what you just stated its purpose was?
Nothing.
It was just that.
Purpose, it simply said, we're not going to let you inject our children with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or perform any sort of surgical procedure designed to alter the appearance or to try to allow that person to emulate the opposite gender. And that's as simple as that. And again, should not have been controversial, but it was a huge fight and probably the legislative accomplishment that I'm the proudest of, even though it wasn't me. I mean, it was these grassroots groups and the faith community and
I guess 2/3 of the Senate.
Yeah, 2/3 of the Senate, and it wasn't. I don't even think it was close. It passed pretty easily, both chambers, and but yeah, that was a really historic accomplishment that I'm very proud of.
On the state level, and it seemed like I'm familiar with, a number of other Democrat representatives and state senators, and it seems like to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like to me that many state of Louisiana Democrats, even today, are fairly conservative and moderate, especially when it comes to social issues like abortion and the issue that you just discussed. I mean, what percentage of the Senate is Democrat?
Yeah, slightly less than a third.
Is it less than a third?
Yeah, less than a third. I think both houses have 2/3 majorities, the House and the Senate. But I would take issue with that a little bit. I think that probably used to be the case, that you had a lot of socially conservative Democrats, maybe a handful in the state legislature still, but I don't know that that's the case anymore. Those numbers are dwindling, and I think the Democratic Party has left their members in many respects. And just this session.
Wait, are you saying that you disagree that Louisiana Democrats are not more conservative than like the national Democrats?
So I would say this. I would say that the overwhelming majority of Democrats in the state legislature vote with the National Party. And now I would agree that most registered Democrat voters in the state are more conservative than Democrats around the nation. But and look, I love those men and women, but in most respects, they're voting with the National Party on legislation. Just this session, I had a bill that, look, I've got a federal prison in my district, and
LaSalle, right?
Well, no, there is a LaSalle Corrections, but this is actually a federal correctional facility in Pollock, or just below Pollock, and they were having a terrible problem with male inmates doing perverse things in front of female correctional officers, and for whatever reason, the feds would not prosecute, and they might give them a different job or move them to a different part of the facility, but it just wasn't sufficient to deter that activity. So the warden and actually a group of employees first called me in to see if there's anything we can do. So we passed legislation to simply make it a crime to unlawfully expose yourself in a very antagonistic, aggressive manner to correctional workers. How in the world can anybody be against that, right? Almost every Democrat in the House, in the Senate, voted against it. Had another bill. Simply said, this House Bill 294 that I passed that provides some liability protection for churches, for church members, for the church organization, in the event that you've got someone disrupting the service, someone intending to do harm, or someone there that's trespassing. Just common sense. Let's give some protection from liability to our churchgoers. Let's put in statute that places of worship, just like our homes, our businesses, our vehicles, are private property, and you've got a right to defend those places. We debated this bill 45 minutes on the House floor. Almost every Democrat voted against it, and it's. I'm just not convinced that they truly believe those are bad policies, but for whatever reason, they feel like compliance with the National Party, adherence to those principles, are what's expected of them, and it is disappointing. But for me, that's why party matters, and I'm proud to be a lifelong Republican. Now, I probably had 5 other bills pass with unanimous support, but when it comes to criminal justice, even when it comes to some of these social bills, matters of fiscal responsibility, there's a clear divide between Republicans and Democrats, and it's unfortunate. But I think even the state legislature, we're becoming much more partisan, probably not to the scale of things in Washington, D.C., but certainly partisanship is at play.
Talking about crime and safety, what can the government do that doesn't strip everyone of their freedoms to control or to reduce the crime rate?
So, look, I would say that the number one function of government is to protect its citizens. Number one. I think government was instituted to provide protection to its citizens. And so why do we have more people in jail in Louisiana than many other states? We commit more crimes. And so, we've got to start, and we've done this. The first thing when Governor Landry came into office, first thing we did is have a special session on crime. And so the punishment has to fit the crime. You've got to have a deterrent in place that when somebody breaks the law, the penalty is sufficient to deter that crime. And it's just a basic of matter of justice as well. If you break the law, if you harm someone, justice requires that you pay the price. And so, look, I'm a law and order guy. Now, of course, we have to ask the question, how do we stop people from becoming career criminals? We've got to rehabilitate them before they get into this cycle of committing crime after crime after crime. But, for me, if we're expecting government to completely solve this matter with crime and drug abuse and even mental health, of course there's things we can do, but I would also say that you can't expect to solve spiritual problems with secular solutions. And ultimately, as a Christian, we've got to start teaching people right from wrong at an early age. And if you look at how the home has broken up, and especially in certain communities, we've got children who don't know their fathers. They may not know their mothers. They're being raised by grandparents or aunts and uncles. So, of course, the government has a role to play. We need to be incentivizing families to stay together instead of rewarding people for not being personally responsible for their actions. So I think we can incentivize good behavior. I'm proud of the investments we've made in early childhood education. I think over $400 million in this last year's budget went to early childhood. And as someone who's married to an educator, I've heard this from my wife and from some of her fellow teachers, is so many kids, elementary, especially in the elementary schools, they come to kindergarten or pre-K with vastly different levels of attainment. Some kids, they know how to read and write, and they know what's socially appropriate, and that's because they learned that at home. And that's not the case with some kids. And so I think this investment in early childhood, some of these kids, they don't even have the motor skills it takes to do even the basic things that set you on that path to success. So I think the investments we've made in early childhood education are going to pay off. And I think mental health is an area where we need to see what we're doing wrong. I mean, we've got a lot of substance abuse issues that I think are related to this mental health crisis that we've got. And so I think we've taken steps to address that. But again, I'm not one that's going to say lock them up and throw away the key. But absolutely, I'm a believer that the punishment must fit the crime, that going to jail should be something that is not fun. There should be labor involved. But look at things like what Sheriff McCain in Grant Parish has done. So when you go to the Grant Parish Detention Center, you're going to learn a skill. They've partnered with the local community college. There you can get a forklift certification. And so you're not going to prison to become a better criminal. You're going to learn a skill that's going to be of value when you've done your time and served your sentence. They're going to help put you in a position with a local employer. They've also built a chapel. And I think we were the first parish in the state to Angola has a program through the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary where prisoners in Angola can get their degree in theology and pastoral ministries. And so we were the first parish in the state, I believe, to have a minister, a prisoner serving a life sentence, to leave Angola and to come to the detention center in Grant Parish to serve as a minister to prisoners. So, you look at that faith component, you look at the job training and skill set component. I think that's a great model for how we need to be approaching criminal justice. And I think we're doing that in a lot of areas around the state.
Well, it just seems to me that, I think the United States has like the highest incarceration rate around the world as far as countries go. And then the state of Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate of the 50 states. And it's like, I agree with you. We got to hold people accountable, particularly if they harm someone. I'm not so sure about crimes that don't clearly harm someone, but for sure crimes that cause injury to another person, I feel like those offenders definitely should be held to a punishment that lines up with the severity of their crime. But I mean, what can we do? And what is the early childhood piece? I mean, what does it do to reduce the rates of those crimes?
Well, and let me mention this first. The proof is in the pudding. And look, we came in 2024 and we rolled back a lot of the soft on crime policies of Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards. And if you see what Governor Landry has done with sending the state police to New Orleans, crime is dramatically down in New Orleans. And I think crime is down statewide. Sure, we're locking more people up. But you know what? If that's what it takes, so my wife and kids can drive to Alexandria or Natchitoches or Monroe and be safe, so be it. I mean, that's a price I'm willing to pay. And, our first priority has to be protecting law-abiding citizens. And that's what we're doing here in Louisiana, and it's working. Now, it's caused some people some heartburn, and we've made some people mad, but it is working. Crime's down. But how does early childhood help? If you get those kids going in the right direction early. So what we know is if they fall behind their classmates, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, they'll never catch up. And so I think it's a great investment of state dollars to make sure, and most of these pre-K programs are income-based. And I'm fine, even as a conservative Republican, I'm fine with that. We need to identify the families who most need this help. I'd love to send every kid to pre-K. Hopefully we're getting there. But if not, let's send the kids who really need it to get started where they can read, where they can do basic math, where they can form the social skills necessary to succeed at life. And I'm not an education expert, even though I'm married to one, but I think it's pretty much the consensus that if you can establish basic skills in children at a very young age, there's a much greater likelihood that that's going to translate into greater levels of success and being a productive member of society as they get older.
Going back to the tort reform topic, we talked about a minute ago, there's 20,000 lawyers in the state of Louisiana that are licensed to practice law. And I think there's a pretty high percentage of those lawyers that are active in the practice of law. It seems to me, let's say it took $100,000 for each one of those people in today's dollars. It's probably more than that, but let's say it took $100,000 per lawyer. That'd be
takes a lot more than that. Make some of y'all happy.
Well, it would be roughly $20 billion in education that was spent by those individuals. And so I see it as an asset that our state has to deploy in service of some of the problems that we're talking about, from criminal justice to the tort issue. And ultimately, what is a tort?
Yep, a harm.
It's a harm. Yeah. A tort is a harm upon another person, and it suggests a remedy to the person that is suffering from that harm. And the purpose of insurance is what?
Well, the purpose of insurance at its most basic level is to provide people peace of mind at a level they can afford, and to give them that financial security to protect against catastrophic loss. That is how I would describe insurance.
And I think I would similarly describe it, but maybe slightly differently. I would say it's a financial vehicle to reduce the risk of loss for the person that is the insured. So that if they sustain a loss, or if they cause an accident that causes someone else to sustain a loss, that they don't have to bear the financial burden in total all on their own.
No, I agree. So the counter to that and the balancing side of that is we live in a society where people feel like they have to have insurance because most of us do not have the assets laying around to protect us in the event of significant tort claim that may be filed against us. We don't have the assets laying around to protect against some sort of catastrophic property loss, whether it be fire or theft or tornado. And so the way insurance works is a group of people get together, they accept that global exposure by each one of them contributing to that entire risk pool. Now, if the risk becomes so great that you can't afford to be part of that risk pool, then what are your options? You just live life without insurance, hoping nothing goes wrong, or you give something else up. So maybe instead of going on that vacation or sending your kid to college or renovating your home, you pay insurance. And so there's got to be a balance there. And I met earlier this week or last week now, I guess, with a couple of logging contractors. They're desperate. They're desperate, and their industry's changing. But a big part of why they're struggling is insurance.
I've had 2 logging trucks dump loads of logs on my property at the bottom of this exit, the Jackson Street exit right here, in the last year and a half, probably.
Yeah, probably going too fast. Yeah.
Well,
and so it's I can tell you this. So recently, we had a logging contractor in my district go out of business because they could not afford the insurance. So that's 25 or 30 employees. That's 25 or 30 families, and so we've got to figure out a way where they're not driving around with the bullseye on their back. And right now they are. Now, if they cause...
They're not driving around with the bullseye. They're the one that's shooting the gun.
Well, that's...
Because whenever they screw up, you got, several dozen tons of material that causes, what's that movie where the logging truck... where there's a violent death, Final Fantasy type situation, huh? Final Destination type catastrophic events that they caused, and they caused it because they
Don,
screwed up.
That's what insurance is for. But for every story like that, there's 10 stories for a minor incident where you may not even have physical damage to the claimant's vehicle. We've literally
With a
heard,
logging truck?
We've literally, a side swipe, yes, where you literally have no physical damage, and you've got a $500,000 judgment. Now, surely you can recognize there's abuse there too.
I think there certainly is abuses on the claimant side of things, But that logging business went out of business because they probably had some claims on their books and their rates were higher, as they should have been. And what could have happened leading up to that situation is they could have had some training policies and procedures that made it less likely for their operators to have those incidents.
Yeah, you are speculating, counsel.
I am speculating, but am I wrong?
And those
Did they have claims on their books?
I don't know, but look, you are absolutely correct that there are bad actors. And look, don't get me wrong. If someone is injured and severely injured, they need to be compensated. And I am 100% in favor of making sure they're compensated fairly, 100%. And look, and I've worked closely with LAJ on a lot of this reform, but I do think we have to recognize that when we're such an outlier, when we file twice as many claims, when we file twice as many lawsuits.
I think there's some hot zones in there that, like,
there are.
Like
There's
Jefferson
areas,
Parish and
there's areas more
Parish.
litigious than others. So we've got to strike a balance. I think we have. I think we're at a good place right now. In fact, those logging contractors that I met with, for the first time in 10 years or more, their rates have gone down, and that is some of the best news I've heard in months. So look, we could talk about tort reform all day, but look, for me, it's all about the data.
Well, I bring it up to suggest that, as a participant for the claimants, typically, I mean, I've never really defended a civil claim, maybe a handful of kind of one-off situations, but for the most part, I never really have been involved in the defendant part of the equation in a civil claim, but I primarily handle the plaintiff part for the claimant. And it seems to me that the part of the equation that maybe is easily overlooked by people that haven't been in the situation of being a claimant is there's a tremendous amount of effort involved in marshaling forward what's necessary to, like you're suggesting that there's some little fender bender and somebody get paid $500,000. Well, maybe at the trial level they got that, but for it to stick, there's a lot of things that have to happen for the Court of Appeals to review and say, okay, yeah, this is legit.
Well, and look, I'm not here defending insurance companies like I mentioned to you. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been representing insureds in their disputes with insurance companies. For every, I know y'all don't like the word frivolous, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better word. For every frivolous lawsuit, I think there's a claim that should have been paid upfront, fairly, promptly, that was not. So there's bad actors on every side. One of the things I'm proud of, we just so we passed legislation in 24 that made it a fraudulent insurance act to misrepresent the scope of damages on an invoice, quote, statement in relation to property damage claims for the insured or the insurer, to misrepresent scope of damages, cost of repairs. That I just brought an amendment to the NCOL, National Council of Insurance Legislature Model Act, to incorporate that statute, the anti-fraud statute, into their model fraud law. So we've done a lot of good things when it comes to insurance. And again, when we were going around the state in 2025 talking about insurance reform, my speech was we've got 5 legal reform measures, we've got 5 consumer reform measures, and that has been my approach all along. We're not going to advocate strictly for the insurance companies. We're not going to advocate strictly for the plaintiff attorneys. We're going to focus on the policyholder, on the people we represent, and I think we have. And you probably weren't happy with some of the bills that got passed, but the proof is in rates. And we're seeing there is no disputing that since 2024, rates are going down, and I expect them, not that we don't have more work left to do, but I expect them to continue trending in that direction.
Who would you say is your favorite Republican president besides Donald Trump?
Ronald Reagan. And, I was born in 1971, and I guess the earliest political memory I have is the Reagan. Must have been 1979, right before the election in 1980. Is before Reagan took office, he more or less went on record telling Iran, you free the hostages, or there's a world of hurt coming. And something like 8 days, or maybe even right before Reagan took office, the Iran hostages were freed. And so, my most vivid political memories as a child is, and there are a lot of similarities with Reagan and Trump, is, the Carter years were a time when the nation seems to have lost pride in being an American, and there was a lot of protest and a lot of disquiet and unrest. And Reagan came in. Of course, he was this great promoter of conservative values and policies, but he also restored pride in being an American, and that stuck with me. I can remember the Berlin Wall coming down. I think that was actually under George Bush, but due to Reagan's efforts in winning the Cold War. And for me, without a doubt, Ronald Reagan is the greatest president that I remember. We're not, Trump is in a category all by himself, and again, I think it's God raises up people for certain times in history, and I don't know that anybody could have taken on the establishment and fought some of these battles when it comes to the border and DEI and getting this wokeness out of some of our institutions of higher learning, restoring pride, making America great again. I think President Trump has just done an amazing job of that.
What criticisms would you have of President Trump?
I wouldn't really say any criticisms. I would say that, look, President Trump is his own man, and he's a bare knuckle brawler from New York City. I mean, that's who he is. That's his style. That would not necessarily be my style, but even if some would suggest that's a criticism, I would suggest that perhaps that's his greatest strength. That he's going to face problems head on. He's going to say things in a way that might make people mad, but I wouldn't characterize that as a weakness. I would characterize that as a strength and what our country needed at this time.
So, going to the other side of the aisle, who are some Democrat presidents that you particularly admire?
Let's see. How far back do we have to go?
I don't know.
Oh boy! So it would not be anyone in my lifetime. So, John, I can't name one. Heck, I think all our great presidents have been Republicans. And you look at LBJ, and you look at Carter, and the damage they did with what LBJ did with social welfare programs, just set our nation down a horrible, destructive path of dependency. And maybe that's controversial to say that, but that's how I feel. And I think the impacts of his policies, of some of FDR's policies, Huey Long, and look, my family's from mother's families from Wynn Parish, and they were never supporters of the Longs. But I can tell you that, the ghost of Huey P. Long still haunts that capital, and the idea that local government has to come begging to Baton Rouge for money every session is part of the problems that we've got with our state stems from that mentality, and that's Huey Long populist policy that led us down that path. I know we may be running out of time. This is an interesting story that I haven't shared with too many people. I've recently gotten interested in genealogy, and my great grandfather on my daddy's side was a man named Brigadier General Pierre Couvillon, and he served as a state senator from Avoyelles Parish in the 1850s, and apparently Senator Couvillon was known as a great reformer and someone who railed against corruption, and legend has it he was given a passionate speech against corruption in the halls of the old state capitol and had a massive heart attack and died on the floor of the state capitol, and his ghost still haunts the old state capitol today. And so, I don't know if that's in my genes or what, but
I hope,
hope
you don't have a heart attack.
But the idea that public servants are there for the people, and that government serves at the pleasure of the people, we've got to get that mentality back. The idea that people are serving to enrich themselves or out of personal ambition is just repulsive to me, and that's not who I am. Again, public service, serving the legislature, serving in Congress, truly I see that as an extension of my faith and a ministry. And so, if nothing else, whether you like my beliefs or where I stand on issues, I would certainly hope that people realize I'm running for the right reasons and my heart's in the right place, and certainly not going to Washington, D.C. to make my personal fortune or to elevate my name. It's about serving the people of the 5th District.
What citizens in our state do you think get overlooked the most that are deserving?
Boy, would I be in trouble if I didn't start with teachers. And my wife is a teacher in Grant Parish, my home parish, probably one of the poorest parishes in the state, and our teachers make less than just about any other parish, maybe the 3rd or 4th lowest paid teachers in
what does a teacher there get paid?
I don't know what they start out with, probably low 30s, I would think. A teacher starts out, maybe upper 20s, but, you can drive 10 minutes south into Rapides Parish and make $10,000 more. So, and again, I firmly believe that government works best at the local level. So I think we need to empower local government, including local school boards, to make decisions about curriculum and how to best educate their children. I realize that some parishes are in a better position due to their tax base and even their location, along the Mississippi River or the coast where there's more industry. They're in a better position to step up and help those teachers than some of the poor parishes. But I do think it's very important to make sure that every child has access to a quality education, and that we at least pay our teachers enough to where they don't have to leave their home parish and go to a more prosperous parish just because they can't make it on what we may be paying in one of our poor parishes. So we've got to evaluate, and I think with this MFP task force that's been set up, we've got to evaluate how we pay teachers. May not be a federal issue, but I certainly think that answers the question of who we need to start with. Look, I think the timber industry and loggers and farmers don't get the attention that they deserve. And we have to be very intentional and focused on how we can help those industries, how we can identify.
Loggers?
Well, logging is the number one. The timber business is the number one agricultural industry in the state, and they're struggling right now. Insurance is a part of that.
It's
The
a
global
market-based business, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's so valuable to who we are as a people, who we are economically, and so look, I do think one of the roles of government is to participate in economic development and to partner not just with timber, but with row crops and oil and gas, to partner with those industries and recognize that we are in a global economy. And if there's things government can do to open up new markets or to incentivize investment in the timber industry or in ag or oil and gas, at the very least, what we need to be doing is removing regulatory hurdles to prospering in those industries. So, yeah, I think for the most part, people just want government to get out of the way. But no, the timber industry is an area that we need to be assisting in identifying new markets for wood products. And there's so many ancillary industries that go along with that raw product. The paper mill in Campty recently closed, but it's not just those employees there at the paper mill. You've got mechanics and tire stores and people who sell chemicals to the wood product. So yeah, the collateral effects of losing a plant like that are pretty devastating for a community. So no, I think it's certainly an accepted role of government to partner with industry, with agriculture, and absolutely something I plan on doing.
Well, it seems like it's pretty challenging to compete in wood products with market participants like in Brazil that have like basically unlimited trees. I mean, they've got so much untapped.
Well, but and again, I don't want to wade too deep off into an area where I'm not an expert, but capacity is not the issue. In fact, we've got an overcapacity of pine timber now. In fact, you can't hardly, the way I understand it is you can't hardly find, if you're a small landowner with 100 acres, you can't hardly find someone to come in there and harvest that timber because it's just not worth moving in your equipment, setting up just for a week's or 2 weeks worth of work. So I don't think capacity is the issue. Overregulation is an issue. Of course, we've taken steps in the state legislature to become more friendly when it comes to tax policy, lowering the personal and corporate income tax rate. So we've got more work left to do there. So we need to be adopting taxation policies, regulatory policies that allow businesses to succeed across the board. And look, not just big business, but small business as well. And you did a lot of preparation for this interview. I'm impressed.
So, why Congress and why not? Why now?
Well, let's face it, open seats don't come along every day. And so, look, I firmly believe that, and I keep coming back to faith, and I guess that's who I am, but, I think God has a plan for every one of us. And I wish I could say I'm someone who's known from the time I was a young child exactly what God wants me to do with my life, but I'm not. And my philosophy have always been, God, wherever you put me, I'm going to serve. And if a door opens, I've got to have the faith and the courage to walk walk through it. And that's what this is for me. And again, my lifelong dream is not to be a politician. I still have a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that I guess I am a politician. 7 years in the legislature. I love my country, and I love my state, and I love my family. And I think our nation is at a dangerous crossroads right now. And when I see this ideological struggle and Marxism seeming to grab a hold of people's minds, and we're electing socialist mayors and Congress people, that scares me. And I'm afraid that we're losing the America that has really been the arbiter of freedom for the world for 250 years. We're losing the America that has led to more human flourishing and freedom and liberty than any nation before us. And so if I've got an opportunity to go and fight with President Trump, to fight with Speaker Johnson, that's what I'm going to do. And nobody's going to do it with more passion and conviction and courage than I will. And that's what I plan on doing.
So if voters give you this opportunity 2 years from now or 4 years from now, what do you think those voters will see as being different in a positive way?
They're going to see that I'm the most accessible, available, boots-on-the-ground congressman they've ever had. And they're going to know that if you're a mayor or a sheriff or a police juror, or for that matter, if you're a regular citizen and you want to talk to me, you're going to get in touch with me. That's been my the promise I made. The only promise I made when I ran for office the first time is, if you call me, I'm going to call you back. If you disagree with me, I'm going to take the time to explain to you how I formulated my position, why I voted like I did. So, you know, what I'd like to tell the people of Monroe and Ouachita Parish in Northeast Louisiana, you're going to get tired of seeing me. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to have a local office here in Monroe, West Monroe. I will hire the best possible staff to take care of constituent issues. And again, if you're a mayor or a sheriff or a police chief, you are going to get tired of seeing Gabe Firment and his staff, because they're going to be there. You'll have my cell phone number, and I am going to fight for the people of the 5th District. And when I travel around this district, and I have been, it amazes me. We all want the same things, and for the most part, we all have the same values. We want safe communities. We want the opportunity to give our kids a good education. We want functioning water and sewer and good roads and good drainage. We want to take advantage of the mighty Mississippi, and we want opportunities for our kids and grandkids to stay here and make a living. We might have differences on how you get there, but I think we all agree that's what we need here in Louisiana. And it's going to be my pledge to you that I'm going to do everything I can to see that we have those things and that we make Louisiana great. And I'm excited about it. And, man, we are off to a great start.
What's something that you failed at that really taught you a valuable lesson?
There's a particular thing in mind, and I'm not going to go into great detail on a personal level, that taught me humility. Taught me humility, taught me to understand people better, and perhaps to not be so judgmental, and to have a better understanding of the fact that we all have different backgrounds and different life experiences. So Humility, I think, is one of the keys to being a successful servant leader. And like I've had many failures out there on the ball field and in business, and the bill to protect children from sex changes. I filed it 2 years prior where it didn't go through. I filed lots of bills that didn't make it through, but I think we learn more from failure than we do from succeeding, because it teaches you persistence. It forces you to find a path, to reach out to others, to identify what the problems with your idea or your beliefs were. So, look, I think we learn more from failure, and I think that's will sure go a long way into making me a congressman who approaches his constituents with humility and grace. And look, I think that's one of my biggest assets. And not to say anything the least bit derogatory about anybody who may be running against me, but I think the ability to connect with the regular person is something I've been blessed with, and hopefully that is something that I can get across to the voters. I think I just got to get out there and meet enough of them. But I think the fact that I'm somebody who pays a mortgage and struggles with the high cost of gas and groceries and insurance, and I know what it's like to send my kids to public school. I spend my Fridays at high school football games and my Sunday mornings at church. I mean, that's who this district is. That's who this district is. That's who I am. And I think that gives me a valuable perspective on things.
If you could sit down with the 20-year-old version of Gabe Firment, what advice would you give him?
Well, look, the answer you normally get is don't change a thing, and I think that is a ridiculous advice. So I would probably say listen to your parents. They know what they're talking about. And, the biggest advice I would have given myself back then is don't be scared to fail. Don't be scared to fail. Don't be scared to take big chances. I was a pre-law major, and I graduated from LC, and I looked at my bank account, and I wanted to be a lawyer, and I just decided I couldn't afford to go to law school. Well, I could have, and I just didn't do it, and that's a regret. I regret not going to law school. Again, I think God works everything out, but and hopefully I am courageous enough to give my own son this advice: is to don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail big. Just if God's leading you to do something, do it.
What do you think the best advice that you ever actually received is?
To accept Christ as my Savior, without a doubt, and that's that's the key to all these political problems that we've taught. Now, this side of heaven, we're never going to solve all those problems because we live in a fallen world with sinful people. But I'm a Christian, and the best advice I could give anyone it would be to confess your sins and to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior.
Amen.
Yeah, that's who I am.
Well, thanks again for coming on. I want to tell you personally, I admire you for taking this risk and stepping out there and offering your services and time and effort and energy and passions to represent the people of the 5th Congressional District, which I am a citizen of that. I'm a resident of that district, and I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that, and I think it also takes a tremendous amount of focus to do it successfully. So I wish you all the best.
I appreciate it. Hey, and this has been a great opportunity. Thank you so much for this chance.
Yes, sir. And I wish you good luck.
Yeah. You've got my cell. Call me anytime.
You want me to give everybody your cell?
Hey, Put it out there. It doesn't bother. In fact, I'll put it out there. My cell is 318-201-6769. And, of course, now for The Real Politician, you can follow me on Facebook.
Okay.
Firment for Congress, I believe, is the Facebook page. We've got a website as well. But, no, in all seriousness, please reach out. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to meet, I'd be more than happy to come talk with you.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
John, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.